Ka followed Kesarah off the Starliner and into the bustling spaceport. Having grown up traveling with his parents, he was used to busy orbits, but Empress Teta had seemed particularly crowded. Part of it he imagined had to do with the fact that, like Coruscant, much of the planet was covered in cityscape or mining facilities. It wasn't anywhere near as built up as Coruscant, but it was certainly heavily urbanized. He could also sense a certain unease in the air, as if there was something just bubbling below the surface of the glittering city that threatened to burst free. Kesarah seemed oblivious to this sense of ill-ease permeating things, but Ka kept his senses turned, and he noticed the numerous guards stationed around the port. Reaching out with his mind, he touched the surface thoughts of a few of these security forces to see what had them so on edge. The answer didn't surprise him. There was ill-ease over who would ascend to the throne of Empress Teta. Glancing around at some of the banners that decked the halls of the spaceport, he noticed several that were from one era or another. He wondered how contested the last monarch's rise to power had been. It was something to look into. "Noble Jedi," a richly dressed and rather portly human called as he approached them with a bow, "I am Al-Rahan. I have been tasked with greeting you and conveying you to your residence for your stay." Kesarah beamed, her braintails swishing back and forth. "We still haven't claimed our bags." "Taken care of," Al-Rahan said. "Your things will be waiting for you at your residence." He gestured for them to accompany him. "This way, please." Ka and Kesarah followed their escort out of the bustling terminal and sit down what appeared to be a private facility, with far fewer beings, and these seemingly very important beings in their manner of dress and accompanying staff was an indication. What greeted them took him by surprise, though. Kesarah seemed rather excited by it. Ka seriously doubted the airspeeder was actually gold, but even if it was just plated, it was still impressive regardless. As Al-Rahan opened the door, Kesarah slid into the luxurious seating without a moment's hesitation. Ka, however, did hesitate a moment at the prospect of riding the gaudy conveyance, but a gentle urging by their escort had him moving into the seat beside Kesarah. So ensconced, the airspeeder rose up from the position it was in and raced through the private terminal before emerging into the city itself. Ka's head turned in every direction as he looked around at the gilded cityscape in which they found themselves. "Honored knights," Al-Rahan said at the seated bow, "welcome to Sinagar." Kesarah couldn't believe that she was seeing as they rode through the sprawling city. All the towers and spires glittered with golden reliefs and services. It didn't have the lights and glitter of Coruscant, but it seemed far richer. She glanced over at Ka, seeing his quiet features as his eyes scanned the city around them. She wondered if he ever reacted to anything. So far, his responses to everything had been muted. It was obvious that he was taking in everything around him, though, his eyes darting this way and that as they examined the scenery racing by. It was as though he didn't seem to respond to anything the way she would like. She would have preferred a more animated partner, in all honesty, though she'd proven that he could be just as devious as she could be during the trip to Empress Teta. His telepathic trick had certainly come as a surprise, and she'd enjoyed sparring with him. It was nice to have someone who wasn't going to just kick her butt with a saber, and he used the same dual saber design as she did. "What do you think, Ka?" she prompted as their ride continued. He blinked, his eyes turned to focus on her intently. "About? The city, of course," Kesarah declared with a laugh. Are you here with me, or are we just over there spacing out?" Ka shook his head. "Forgive me, I was just getting a little sense of the people here." "Oh?" Kesarah asked playfully. "And what did they feel like?" He gazed at her, his blue eyes meeting her brown for a quiet moment before he shrugged and looked away. "Discontent." Frowning, Kesarah leaned forwards. "How can you possibly know that?" "I can sense a lot of the surface emotions here. There's a great deal of dissatisfaction with how things are done by the ruling class." "I hope the noble Jedi is not implying that the monarchy has conducted itself inappropriately," Al-Rahan said with a leering smile as he ran his hands together. Ka considered their escort for a moment before shaking his head. "No, of course not. The monarchy has the complete support of the Jedi and the Republic." Kesarah, though, was not convinced, and now she was curious. What was it that Ka was sensing that she was missing? Reaching down, she took his hand on the seat between them. "Show me?" she asked curiously. "I'd like to understand." He glanced between her and Al-Rahan, who was watching them intently, before nodding, turning to her fully on the seat. "Focus," he said, "just like we did when we meditated." Kesarah remembered the long, tedious hours they'd spent in silence, focusing on their breathing and clearing their thoughts. Was he really going to make her do that here? She complied, though, wanting to understand just what it was that her partner could feel and had him seemingly on edge. Her breathing slowed as she closed her eyes, her heart calming as she stretched out with her senses. She didn't really detect anything out of the ordinary, just the usual you'd expect from a bustling city. Then she felt Ka's mind touching hers, and a jolt surged through her as she felt her senses suddenly boosted well beyond what they had been a moment before. With Ka's mind guiding hers, she could sense what it was like that he was picking up on. Beneath all the glitter and glam of the wealthy cityscape, she could sense an underlying resentment deep within the city around them. It was actually unsettling in all honesty, like a rumbling tremor that threatened to overcome a full-fledged quake. Unsettled by the sensation, she broke off the connection with Ka, looking at him in disbelief. "Do you always sense that sort of thing?" He shrugged. "There's always some trace of it, but only when I concentrate do I detect something that deeply." Kesarah shivered, glad that her own senses were not so keen that she'd notice that sort of thing on a regular basis. She didn't want to think that what it'd be like to feel those around her were feeling all the time. Maybe that was why Ka seemed so observant. He was taking in all what it would be like to have those feelings and deciding how to react to them. Kesarah wondered if there was a way to distract him from all that. She couldn't imagine that it would be a very stress-free way to live. "Is everything well, Honored Knight?" Al-Rahan asked, leaning forwards, his weaselly features gazing at her questioningly. "I'm fine," Kesarah lied, stroking her brain tails to hide her irritated twitching. "How much longer until we reach our destination?" "It won't be long now," Al-Rahan said as he leaned back and gave another courteous bow. "Your residence has been prepared in advance." Kesarah nodded, leaning back in the seat. She remained uncharacteristically quiet throughout the remainder of the trip, unsettled by the feeling of suppressed rage bubbling beneath the surface of the golden city around her. Watching Kesarah after sharing the sensations of the city's discontent was interesting. She seemed deflated and even upset now, the surface of her mind ill at ease as she shifted in the seat, seemingly unable to settle herself. Ka hadn't meant to cause her any ill ease, just to simply share with her what it was he was sensing from the people they were expected to be interacting with. He didn't say anything more to Kesarah during their flight, instead focusing on the sensation of resentment that he could still very easily detect permeating around them. It wasn't directed at anything specific that he could sense, just a general feeling of discontent that was fueled by something deeper that he would have to pry to understand. He knew he was capable of taking the thoughts of others by force, but preferred not to do so. It always seems an intrusion to him. But taking the surface thoughts and emotions of another being was one thing, but to delve deeper involved a far more invasive approach, one Ka wasn't willing to take up lightly. Trey often chided him, saying that if he had the telepathic capabilities that Ka did, he'd use them on everyone regardless of their discontent. Ka didn't like that notion. He feared that over-exercising his abilities might lead to ostracization. The last thing he wanted was for others to be nervous around him for fear of what he might be doing inside of their minds. In this case, though, he felt it bore noting the undercurrent of resentment and discontent among the people of the planet. After all, if he and Kesarah were meant to be seen as representatives of the Greater Republic and the Jedi Order, it'd be best to be aware of any issues that could arise for the Republic at a later date. With the Empress Teta system producing so much raw material for the Republic, any disruption or loss in supply could cause serious issues. He was not unaware either of this planet's particular ties to the Sith. It had been generations ago, of course, but the Sith Wars had been sparked here when Exar Kun and Ulic Quadroma had allied and helped to reforge the Sith into the force that could fight the Republic, and had done so ever since. "We are here," Al-Rahan said. "Ka," Kesarah breathed in apparent awe. "Look." Turning in his seat to see what Kesarah was looking at, Ka was treated to the side of an elaborate compound that could only be described as palatial. Surrounded by a high white wall from which red banners of the Republic were draped, the main building stretched out to either side in a rectangular fashion. Its walls were studded with dozens of tall windows and balconies that glittered in the sunlight, and turreted crenellations of the building were gilded the same gold from what many of the other buildings they had fallen past. Their airspeeder alighted in front of the yard at the edge of the Duracrate path, obviously built specifically for the purpose of landing speeders to avoid ruining the well-kept grounds. "Whoa," Kesarah said as Al-Rahan helped her out of the speeder. "I didn't know we would be getting our own palace." "The very best for the honored knights of the Republic," Al-Rahan said, as he walked alongside them up to the path in its well-kept track, which took them past a lavish marble fountain. "This is where our Republic representatives always stay when they visit us here in Sinagar." "I love it," Kesarah cried as the large double doors swung in to reveal the 4 servants waiting for them. "Your driver will pick you up this evening," Al-Rahan was saying as Ka watched Kesarah revel in their temporary abode. "He will convey you to the royal residence, where you will meet the heirs apparent." "Thank you," Ka acknowledged with a bow. "We won't be late." Oh, Kesarah breathed as two servants who had been tasked with seeing her to her chambers opened the door for her, and she got her first look inside. If there was such a thing as decadence, then this must be heaven, she surmised. There was so much room. There was a small being a relative term, and well-furnished receiving room that led into the actual living quarters, beyond which there was just too much. A four-poster gilt bed was the centerpiece of the whole affair, and she immediately jumped into the silk sheets, reveling in the cool touch of the fabric against her arms and legs. There was a full closet where all her things had already been distributed in a sensible fashion, and the bath was equally impressive, the tub more than large enough to allow her a full submerge, most comfortably, should she desire. The ill ease that Ka had exposed to her earlier passing from her mind now, as she enjoyed the moment of being completely spoiled for a time, and the two servants waited on her patiently. It took her several minutes to realize that she had to dismiss them before they would leave, at which point she rather carelessly shooed them away. She had a few hours left before she and Ka were picked up by their driver. The fact that they had a driver was almost as thrilling as the room itself, and she fully intended to make full use of not only the pleasure of the bed, but the bath as well. She smiled to herself as she stripped and started filling the tub with water. This trip had just kept getting better and better. In fact, it was starting to feel more like a vacation than a job.